This is the Rivian R2, a rugged midsize EV that starts at just $45,000. It's the most exciting new vehicle since Tesla launched the Model Y, which went on to be the best-selling car in the world, including beating out every model gas car available on the market. But it's been a bit over a year since the Rivian R2 was originally announced, and some big changes have happened since then. Unfortunately, some cool features of the R2 have been canceled and won't make it to production. But new updates have been shared about the manufacturing process, and some important new clues have been dropped about a potentially massive leap forward with self-driving autonomy. Let's dive right in. First, let's talk about what's changed. The first cool feature to get axed is the fold-flat front seats, which is a bummer because it would have made car camping awesome despite the R2's small footprint. This is even more true for tall people like myself. Next, the NACS port has been moved to the back left with a bigger port area in order to work more seamlessly with CCS2 for European deliveries. It was previously shown as a very slim port on the back right with intent for sidewalk charging. However, after lots of feedback from pre-order holders and existing Rivian owners, Rivian felt it was best to move the port to the back left. The new port location should make using V3 Tesla superchargers a lot more convenient and certainly a lot less awkward for owners as they're out and about in the real world. Rivian has also deleted the rear accessory ports that would have supported proprietary accessories like a camp kitchen and Rivian designed bike rack. This appears to simplify the manufacturing process and is aimed at reducing cost. Losing these accessory ports isn't the end of the world, as it's still expected to ship with a standard receiver hitch that should work with the wide array of existing trailer hitch accessories available on the market. And if we're being honest with ourselves, is probably what they should have done right from the start. Next, let's talk about what made the cut and is still expected to ship on the R2. The very first thing on that list is arguably the most important, which is the starting price of $45,000. This much lower price point versus the R1S is important to make sure that EVs are accessible to a lot more people. $45,000 should make the R2 a price competitive option against the similarly sized Model Y. This price is expected to be a rear wheel, single motor model with the dual and tri-motor variants costing more. Rivian is also still expecting to offer more than one battery pack size, with the largest range versions being well over 300 miles of real-world range. An extra large haptic scroll wheel on the steering wheel. While it may seem funny to be excited about scroll wheels, Rivian has demonstrated a truly innovative and excellent user interface for drivers to have intuitive control over the car. This input method is likely to be the largest interior design differentiator from existing Rivian models, and I think people are going to absolutely love it. It's likely to be similar to how people felt the first time they used an iPhone or similar smartphone, and how it immediately made you see how all future phones were going to work. Front storage. Despite the lower cost, the R2 is still expected to have a front storage area with a manually closing latch in order to save on cost. As any Tesla or Rivian driver knows, that extra storage in the front is essential to the overall utility of the vehicle. Single motor, dual motor, and tri-motor. The R2 is still expected to offer all three variants of motor configurations, from low cost to max range, and then the performance version with 3 motors for a spicy 0 to 60 time, quote, well under 3 seconds. Multiple battery pack sizes are still expected, including an over 300 mile range option. This new battery pack design is using larger 4695 structural battery pack designs with up to 768 cells in the pack. These individual cells should be sourced from LG Energy Solutions at their brand new Arizona-based factory. This new factory could be potentially very important with the new concerns around tariffs. Now let's talk about production updates. Lately, Rivian and CEO RJ Scaringe have been highlighting the progress towards production-ready builds of R2. This progress has been very exciting and very encouraging on their march to actual production. The first thing they showed off was the high-pressure die casting, which is essential for the structural design of the way the car is to be assembled. Next, they showed off actual R2 bodies that were built on those dies, indicating they built at least 16 of these so far. They also showed off the high voltage treehouse, which is a very integral part of the overall battery pack and powertrain design. They've also shown the R2 battery pack where it can hold 768 of those larger 4695 cells. And lastly, they've shown off the e-coat process as being completed. This is a very critical step that helps protect the vehicle under the skin from corrosion and other issues. This color is very, very unique and leads us to our next topic. Could we see a special launch edition of R2? The original R1 launch that Rivian had a very special set of options and colors available to reward those who were early in line to get their R1s. They had a R1 launch green color that was based on the e-coat shade of that production process. And recently, RJ has hinted that perhaps they should do a launch green version of the R2 as well. If they do this, it would have the exclusive launch green color, likely to have some special badging, and potentially bundle some popular accessories included for a really good deal if it's anything at all with the way that R1T and R1S launch editions were packaged by Rivian when they first launched. Lastly, I want to talk about the exciting autonomy clues that could lead to a massive leap forward in self-driving and autonomy for Rivian vehicles. Now, before I go further, I just want to preface to say this is a collection of research and examples that lead me to believe that there is a significant leap forward in the near future for Rivian and autonomy across R2 and future versions of R1. If you watch the content from RJ Scarange and James Philbin, who's the VP of Autonomy, they've spoken about eyes-off autonomy for Gen 2 vehicles that are on the road today. But they've been very careful about their word choice about when and where a future eyes-off scenario would actually be allowed. This basically constricts the operating domain to be much more limited than maybe one would desire or expect for full self-driving. If you take a look at the overall design of the R2, especially in his E-code image, you can notice that there's a gap in the sensor cluster that is not present on the Gen 2 R1T or the Gen 2 R1S. This could be an area for a potential new sensor for something like LiDAR. You combine this with the fact that back in 2024, I spoke with one of the core Rivian designers who said that, quote, a place for LiDAR was part of the design brief. I believe that these two pieces of information definitely increase the likelihood that there could be a more advanced sensor included in R2 starting just next year. Not only that, but we could also actually see a massive upgrade in the compute capability of the R2 vehicle, as well as a future version of R1T and R1S. Currently, Gen 2 vehicles use a chip from NVIDIA called NVIDIA Orin, which has roughly 254 trillion operations per second of compute. This is approximately 10 times the available compute that was available on Gen 1. However, NVIDIA Orin is not the best that NVIDIA has to offer. In fact, NVIDIA offers a new chip called NVIDIA Thor, which they announced back in 2022, and they expected it to start rolling into other manufacturers in 2025. This NVIDIA Thor chip brings the compute availability from 254 trillion operations per second to 2,000 trillion operations per second. But even that doesn't tell the full story. A lot of these full self-driving and autonomy systems rely on neural networks. So the overall processing is one piece, but the speed and performance specifically of running neural networks tells the bigger story. And NVIDIA claims there is a 60 times performance increase for NVIDIA Thor when compared to NVIDIA Orin, which is what ships in current Gen 2 vehicles. You add all this together with the clear progress that Rivian is making towards improving their self-driving features, it's very obvious to me that they have more ambitions than what they're currently shipping or even what they're currently demonstrating as future versions of the Rivian Autonomy Plus platform. I think Rivians are going to someday do a lot more than just drive for miles in straight lines. So this is basically the summary of my research on Autonomy Clues, which could lead to not only increased levels of sensors, but up to 60 times performance of running neural networks, which are essential for a successful, smooth, and comfortable autonomous system. I hope you enjoyed this video about the update on R2, the features that are missing, the ones that made the cut, the special launch edition, and the Autonomy Clues. If you want to see more videos about Rivian, autonomy, and EVs in general, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe so you can catch the next video. Until then, I'll talk to you soon.